great.
Okay. Okay.
Oops.
Well, as this is coming up, I'll just say welcome. My name is Mrs. Thompson. I am one of the college and career advisors at Las Lomas High School. I'm here tonight with Mrs. Chan, and we specifically serve first gen and high financial need families. Our definition of first generation, actually most colleges in the US, their definition are students whose parents did not go to college anywhere in the world. So if your family came from India and your parents have a degree from there, even if they're not using it here in the United States, you are not considered first gen under the current definitions.
Right.
So,
and it says families whose parents did not graduate, right? So if they started college, they didn't graduate, or yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out. So completed a 4-year education anywhere. Yeah, thank you so much. Jump in anytime, actually. I'm going to turn off my video just so I can save bandwidth here. All right, so oops, are we going? Okay, so colleges they're full of opportunities and challenges. You're going to learn all kinds of new things, new friends. It's really your journey to making your dreams come true. Think of college as a pass-through place, not your final destination, but a place to really making your dreams come true, whether that's an amazing career or whatever you've got in mind. It's a great place to get the skills that you need to make those dreams happen. There will be some challenges. You're getting set up very nicely in the Akalani School District, I have to say. Classes are challenging. There's lots of things to help build your skill set that you will take with you to college. You will be struggling with doing well academically. College is a very different scenario. The classes aren't very regular like they are in high school. You'll be living with roommates, some of you for the very first time. There's fitting in, right? All new people, all new situations. You'll learn to manage money. You will have family concerns. Some parents, as excited as you are to go to college, parents have loved you and raised you 17, 18 years. It's hard for them to let you go. And it's just can be a very emotional time for everybody. You'll be making great new friends. You'll be learning to manage your time. So now is a good time to start practicing that muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh, sorry.
No worries. And you'll want to really help manage your health and wellness. You will be responsible. No one's going to be checking on you. How are you feeling? What's going on? And especially mental health. And with COVID and all that's gone on, many colleges have really beefed up their wellness centers to really be able to help students with whatever they're dealing with. Okay, thank you. Now we can go to the next one.
Okay.
So tonight, we'll be talking about best practices to identify colleges that are a good fit for you and affordable for your family. We'll cover financial aid and a scholarship overview. We'll give you a fall planning timeline, and of course, talk about next steps. So some of this information you already know, so I won't go into excessive detail, but know that there are many options for getting a college education. Community college is the most affordable. In fact, you can qualify to where your tuition is covered on the FT3 program. Lots of options. And DVC is one of the highest transfer rate community colleges into a 4-year college. There is the CSU system, 23 campuses all across the state. It's really meant to get into a career. And then there's the UC system, 9 campuses. It is research focused. But what's wonderful about the UCs, in some private schools and many institutions, a lot of the research opportunities goes to grad students or upper level students. And the UCs pride themselves in even having freshmen in their research labs. In fact, right here at Cal, Jennifer Duda, the woman that worked on CRISPR that won a Nobel Prize, she has 7 freshman lab assistants, research assistants. And whether it's science or whatever, the UCs have an amazing opportunity to do research. So that just as a wide brush are the public options here in California. And these are really great options for first gen and high financial need families, because as Mrs. Chan will talk about later, there's something called the Cal Grant, which you will love. And of course, there are out-of-state options. One of the things to look at if you are looking to save some money is something called WUI, the Western Undergraduate Exchange. And those are colleges in the Western US that have agreed to offer their tuition where you wouldn't pay out of state, which is often very expensive, but you would pay 150% of in-state tuition. So instead of a school being 50,000, it may be 35,000. However, Cal grant aid does not go with you out of state. So you'd have to analyze that trade-off. And only federal aid would apply if you were to go out of state. There are private colleges, there's international colleges. Some are very selective. Some can offer very generous financial aid packages. Some colleges cover 100% of need without any loans. Those colleges are typically for students with very high GPAs, but the payoff is amazing. So that's Stanford, Johns Hopkins, Dartmouth, and Yale. And we actually have a first-gen student from Las Lomas that is attending Yale right now, and it's phenomenal the financial aid she got there. And other schools, they'll cover 100% need, but they will include loans. And when Mrs. Chan will get into this in detail, but just know that it's not that they look at your financial package and say, oh, they can only afford 10,000. No, they'll say, oh, we're only going to offer a certain amount of money, and they expect you to come up with the rest, whether that's in your budget or not. There is something called educational opportunity programs at the CSUs and the UCs. Not every campus has this. I think actually all the CSUs do. Not every UC has it, but it is an opportunity. It's to help support students that need just a little bit of extra support for college success. It's typically, the way you get into the program is typically income-based. Not always. I have seen students with disabilities get into the program as well, but it offers everything from mentoring, counseling, tutoring, just someone to check in on you to see, how's it going? Do you need some help? Help you manage your time, help you to find resources on campus. Some programs have you come to school a little bit early, do a kind of a bridge to college. So you're staying in the dorms, you're learning where the laundry is, you're learning, how to schedule your time and, feed yourself and all those things that play a big role when you're on your own in college. And these actually, I encourage you to go back and look at the San Jose State video on YouTube.
Yes. I'm going to put the link in the chat.
Oh, perfect.
There it is. So folks, save that link, copy it somewhere, and you can take your time on your own time to look at that 4-minute video.
Right. It's talking specifically about San Jose State and the resources there, but it really applies to all the CSUs. They did not say anything in there that didn't apply to other schools. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So the best place to start your search is using Naviance. There's a wonderful tool in there called Supermatch, and you can go into there, set your own criteria. You can look at size of school, where it is, what you're interested in, and it'll give you a list of schools that you can look at, and it'll tell you the percentage that you're matched to it. And you can even click on the Y if it's not 100% and see what doesn't match your criteria. And then you can look at these scattergrams, and this data is based just on your school. So you can see, oh, students from my own school tend to get into this school, or, here's a few students with really high GPAs, they didn't get in. Interesting. And know that when the colleges evaluate your applications, they evaluate you based on your school. They're not comparing you, to students from San Ramon Valley High or Berkeley High. They're looking at just Las Lomas students or just Campo students. So it's important to see kind of how you are in that pool. It's very informative, I think. And then also, every
Sorry.
school has college reps coming in and giving a presentation. If you're really interested in a school, I highly recommend you do the school's virtual tour, or click through the website and do a little bit of due diligence, do some homework so that you know a little bit about the college, so that when the representatives come, you could maybe, ask some questions about specific programs, or, get more information, because sometimes the representatives, they're kind of talking in general, but this is your chance. It's saving you a trip to go to the college or to try to get a hold of a representative. So really maximize that time. And these are other college search tools. There is no one fabulous place to find information. All of these are literally tools, pretend they're in a toolbox, and you're just going to pull one out and try it out and see what it, if it has the information you're looking for. I do have to say, all of these organizations gather your data. So when you first log in, they'll ask, name, email, what year you're graduating. And it's just part of the process. Unfortunately, they don't charge you for doing this, but I'm sure they're selling the list to colleges and other, places on the back end. But you know that already. So College Express is more than just matching. There's all kinds of information, and they categorize colleges based on, actually, I think they even have best colleges for first generation students. There's all kinds of different lists you can look at, but know that not every single college is in their database. So this is their recommendations, not completely unbiased, but it is good information in there. College Niche, again, is another great ranking website. It has reviews by students. Again, it's very informational, but do take it with a grain of salt. So some students, of course, if they're disappointed with something, they're going to tell 20 people and post all these things. And oftentimes students that are kind of, like the campus, but not too crazy about it, they don't post anything. So, so just, again, think about what you're reading, and don't take anything as complete, the only source, I should say. And then at the website Scholar Match, they have a Scholar Matcher tool, which is super helpful. And this is right here in the Bay Area. They used to allow people to come in, but COVID put everything online. But Scholar Match is another great resource to look for colleges. So there we go.
Right, and I just want to add one more thing about Scholar Matcher. Their colleges are designed to help to support the colleges on the list are great at supporting students who have high financial need and providing support services for folks who need money or who are first generation. And so they have a special emphasis there.
Right. And so now that you've seen great ways to identify colleges that fit you academically, socially, and financially, let's talk about paying for college. And Mrs. Chan, would you please take us through this?
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. So paying for college, it's got to be affordable, right? Especially if you need money for college. I'm going to talk about the 4 types of financial aid. I see something in the chat. It's a direct message. I'll get to that a little bit later. In any case, there are 4 types of financial aid. There's free money, or money that does not have to be repaid. And from the federal government, that includes the Pell Grant, the CEOG grant, the Cal Grant is from the state of California. Institutional grants is money that does not need to be repaid, that's offered by the colleges. Then there are loans, borrowed money. And we make a point to say, please avoid bank loans. The terms, first of all, the interest rate is higher. They want you to pay the money back right away. And the terms are just not as favorable as the student loans that you can get from the federal government. The types of loans available through the federal government include a subsidized loan, which means the interest is interest-free while you're in school. So if you borrow $10,000 when you start, When you graduate, it's still 10,000 until 6 months after graduation, when you need to begin repayment, then the interest starts adding on. The unsubsidized is where interest will start adding on from the time you say, yes, I want this loan. The thing about student loans is even if you're offered the student loan, doesn't mean you have to accept it. It's just nice to know that it's available to you if you are offered it. But I'll show you some numbers so you can see, assess for yourself, see how do I determine whether or not I need to take the student loan. The universities sometimes offer a loan to help fill the gap between what you can afford and what they say it will cost. That's typically at a higher interest rate than the federal loans. And then these first three loans are your student loans. So it's you guys, the students, who are on the hook for repaying these loans. And your credit record that's being affected. So if you do take out a student loan, you want to be sure that you are paying it on time, just like you would if you took, bought a car or anything else on credit. I had a credit card, which when we're not necessarily advocating for credit cards right now, you can get through college without them. And the other loan is a Parent Plus loan. That's the other loan that's offered by the federal government. So that's for the parents to take out a loan, and it's higher interest yet compared to the student loans. The third element of financial aid is earned money. And what the federal government can offer is something called work study. Actually, the universities offer it, but the federal government helps make the calculation. And work study is a way to earn money that goes towards your college expenses and is getting a job on campus. Great way to earn money if you need a job. I had a work study program when I went to college, and I worked at the library, and my boss was super flexible. She knew when my midterms were, she knew when my finals were, and so she worked around my schedule and worked around my class schedule. If you work at Starbucks or Target, they're not going to be so flexible. Plus, the jobs that are work study jobs are right on campus. So if you have like a 3-hour block in between a class, that might be time where you could work a couple hours. And again, it's super flexible. So take advantage of that if you're offered it and you need it. The fourth way to help pay for college, besides dipping into your savings, is outside scholarships. So this is money that's offered through different organizations, and I'll have a slide on that in a little bit. How do you apply for this financial aid? You have to fill out some financial aid forms. Everybody should fill out the FAFSA. This opens on October 1. So there's nothing to do right now. Wait until October 1st. We're having a couple sessions to talk more about the financial aid process because it is such an important piece. And for those who are undocumented, you would complete the California DREAM Act, not the FAFSA. So undocumented students are still eligible for some grant money through the state of California, but not money through the federal. So where I said earlier that the federal aid includes Pell Grant and the CEOC grant, which is more limited, that would not be available to undocumented students. Now, some students will have asked, well, my parents are undocumented, but I was born here. You would then qualify to fill out the FAFSA. Whether you fill out the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act is based on your citizenship, not your parents. Okay. Some private colleges will also want you to fill out something called the CSS profile. That's going to ask for a lot more information because they're pulling money from their own endowment funds. So they want to know, how much you have and how much you can pitch in. And that's a whole separate form. If you're only applying to, say, Cal States or UCs, you do not need to fill out the CSS profile. But go to the admissions pages of the colleges that you're interested in to see, and the financial aid pages to see what you might need to fill out to be sure.
Mrs. Chan, can I just
mention absolutely.
Quickly? One of the things with filling out the FAFSA is you never know what's going to happen. So 2 years ago, some families did not fill out the FAFSA thinking they wouldn't qualify, or sometimes parents think, I don't want to share my data with the colleges, whatever. Well, imagine 2 years ago, some families didn't, and then COVID hit, and some of those parents lost jobs or you know, their lives. I mean, significant things happen. And the families that had students where the FAFSA had been filed, they were able to go back to the colleges and renegotiate their terms, their tuition. Families that did not have the FAFSA on file, there was very little that could be done. So even if you think, oh, I'm borderline, I may not qualify, file it anyway. You just never know what might happen.
Yes, thanks for driving that point home. That's right. We view it as catastrophic insurance because you just never know. You just never know, right? And it takes about half an hour to do if you have all your documents ready. So it's a fairly simple process. And again, we'll have additional workshops to help students with that. You can also, before you fill out the FAFSA, because it does take a while for the numbers to come back, if you want to estimate how much college is going to cost you or how much financial aid you might get, there are a couple of things you can do. To estimate how much a college might cost, you can run something called a net price calculator. It's available on every single college website. Just search the phrase, type in the phrase net price calculator, and then the name of college. So net price calculator, Cal State East Bay, net price calculator, UC Davis. And make sure you're going to the website that has a .edu address at the end. There are other third-party websites like collegerector.com that'll say, oh, we can estimate your financial aid. Just as Mrs. Thompson pointed out earlier about some of the junk mail you can get, going to those third-party websites will trigger junk mail that you don't necessarily want. So go to the .edu. Most of you are dependents. If you're living with family members who are helping to cover your expenses, you click a dependent estimator, and this would take about 15 minutes or so. If you have, what you need to know is your roughly how much money your parents have in the bank and what the last year's tax earnings were and so forth. So that can give you a rough idea. This FAFSA forecaster is another handy tool to estimate how much, this is another way of looking at it. This will estimate roughly how much financial aid you might receive. It will give you an estimate, okay? So again, as you're searching for colleges that are affordable, you want to run the net price calculator to see if it's within the ballpark, all right? Okay, this is a little bit of a dizzying slide. So I wanted to show some real numbers here. As Mrs. Thompson pointed out earlier, community college is the least expensive option because the tuition is covered for California community colleges. So if you're living with family and your tuition is covered, your expenses are pretty low. Now, in addition to DVC, which is your neighborhood community college and a fabulous one, for students who want a change of scenery, and I have heard this, oh, I don't want to go to DVC, I just want to get out of the area. Fine, consider Laney, consider Berkeley City College. These are right on the BART line. Laney is in downtown Oakland, Berkeley City College is in downtown Berkeley. They both have more urban vibes. So it's totally up to you. There are options. As for this crazy thing here, okay, the cost of attendance is broken down into tuition and fees, food and housing, or they call it room and board, books and supplies where you can actually save money, transportation, you can save money if you do rideshare. Personal expenses is like your hair, your video games, Spotify accounts, that kind of stuff. And health insurance. Sometimes colleges will add an expense, an estimated cost, because they want you to have health insurance and they don't know if you have it or not. But you can often waive this. Let me say that again. You can waive this expense, which is typically $3,000 a year, roughly, if your family already has health insurance for you, or if you're on Medicaid, you can waive this. You just show some paperwork to the school and they'll take this off your bill if it does show up on your bill. So if you Google the net price calculator for UC Riverside, Sonoma State, and Northwestern is another one that meets full need without loans. They're in Chicago or just outside Chicago. You'll come up with these numbers at the top. The tuition and fees is roughly stated here, and food and housing. What I have in yellow is, if you look at the net price calculator, UC Riverside, Sonoma State, and Northwestern, they're going to show higher amounts than this. Northwestern shows close to $2,000 for books and supplies. Transportation is for UC Riverside was about $1,000 according to their net price calculator thing. So, and then personal expenses varied all over the place. The reason I highlighted it in yellow is I want to make a point that you can save money here. Realistically, average books and supplies, I've talked to several students over the years, is anywhere between $750 and $1,000 a year. And if you buy used books, borrow books from the library, or a lot of professors now are sharing PDFs. They're not even having students buy books. There are ways to save money. And transportation, if you ride share with other people, it's like to Santa Barbara, a lot of students who have their own cars will charge, $30 each way and they can fit 3 more people in their cars. They'll just bring up other students back to the Bay Area. So that's a way to save money compared to, say, taking a train. And it's going to be more expensive for a Bay Area student to go to Northwestern because you're likely to be flying. Sonoma State's going to be less expensive than going back and forth from UC Riverside, which is in SoCal. And then personal expenses, that's a typo. Sorry about that, guys. That should say 2,000, not 200. But that's just a rounded number. And again, you can create a budget and figure out how much do you spend a year on food. You can start by breaking it down by monthly cost. How much do I spend a month going out to eat? How much do I spend a month getting hair, makeup, nails, that kind of stuff? How much do I spend on my subscription accounts and stuff, and video games and things like that, and clothes, and then just multiply it out by year. So this is the estimated cost. Now here's the grant money. This is for someone who gets a maximum aid. All right, so this is assuming maximum aid, and the Pell Grant is the same regardless of which college you go to. The Cal Grant, this is what Mrs. Thompson was saying earlier, it doesn't apply to colleges outside California. So Northwestern, you're not going to get a Cal Grant for Northwestern, nor will you get a Cal Grant for University of Nevada, Reno. But you get a generous Cal Grant at UC Riverside and a fairly generous one for Sonoma State that roughly covers tuition, if you look at the tuition line. And then UC Riverside is throwing in additional $9,000. Sonoma State does not have additional money to kick in. And look at Northwestern, out of that 75,000 or 76,000, they're giving 69,000 for this family that has high financial need. So the total amount of grant money that does not need to be paid back is this line, which leaves a gap of 5,000 for UC, 13,000 for Sonoma State. And if this were 2,000 instead of 200, there'd be another 1,800. That would be like 2,300 there. I'll fix that after this presentation. So how are you going to cover this gap? Well, work study was offered to the student at UC Riverside. So that takes care of 2,000 if the student works on campus. No work study at Sonoma State. At Northwestern, there's an option for work study. And if the student takes a work study option, they'll more than cover the, that should have been 2,000, so 1,800 on top of this. The gap here was 2,300. They're offered work study for 3,150. They don't need to pay anything else beyond that. Whereas this student here, with a gap of 5,000, work study at 2, they'll be offered student loans at a maximum of 5,500 in the first year. But they may only need to take out 3,300 of that to fill the gap after the work study. Does that make sense? And whereas Sonoma State, there's no work study offered, so they would need to take out the full loan to make the numbers work. Okay, and probably plus some, 25. That's 25, right? So they would have to take out the student loans. Okay. Scholarships, the main message I have here is check your Naviance account. Check with your college and career center at your high schools. And because that's where the local scholarships are going to be publicized, and the national ones. We like to make sure that students are applying for the local ones because fewer students apply for the local ones. And so the odds are higher that you'll actually get those scholarships. There are some other good national ones as well. And if you really want to research scholarships, there are these scholarship websites. Mrs. Thompson is going to be hosting a scholarship presentation in January. You can start looking now. A lot of scholarships become available between January and April. Is that about right, Mrs. Thompson?
Yeah, and actually I would not only look at the scholarship, but look at the actual application so that you know what you're looking for. There's a local Walnut Creek Historical Society, and they offer $1,000, and they ask if you're a member and if you've worked at an event. So those of you that are savvy shoppers looking for scholarships, you just might want to join that and maybe volunteer at an event, because obviously it's important to the Historical Society. And you'll just see different things. Some scholarships are looking for a lot of extracurriculars. Many scholarships write essays, and it's just good to know all of that up front. But more about that in January.
Great. Okay, and back to you, Mrs. Thompson, to talk about the fall college planning timeline.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. So next slide. One of the things we need to look at is for you to really pay attention to your individual high schools and what the process is. So you will need to watch your emails. And I know students, you're getting slammed with all kinds of colleges and tons of information, and you're busy with school, but please do pay attention to those emails. Schedule meetings with your guidance counselors and with your college and career center advisors. There's lots of help there, and people are waiting to help you. So please take advantage of that. Also, get on your school's social media accounts. I know at Las Lomas that Ms. Diaz is really great about pumping out information, and it comes through on your phone. So you can use it during dinner and say, Mom, I'm doing college things. Also, watch for information on workshops. There's lots of information out right now that can help you with the process, whether it's applications, whether it's writing essays, and so that you learn the whole process so you're not surprised, or you don't wait until the last minute to get some of these things done. Also, students that are looking to go to private colleges, you will need most always, you will need letters of recommendation. So you'll need to really start honing your list a little bit and asking those teachers for letters of recommendation well in advance. And again, you'll follow your school's process. There may be forms for you to fill out, a senior brag sheet, sometimes a parent letter, and all that helps the counselors and the teachers write good letters for you.
Right. And if you're not sure where to what that process is, be sure to check in with your CCC or with your guidance counselor. At Las Lomas, the brag sheet is in Naviance under surveys to complete, something like that. So that's where you find that. And then you have to let your teacher know that when you politely request for a letter of rec that you've completed the brag sheet, and so that they get a copy.
And you will also thank them actually after they write the letter.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's many ways to apply for colleges. You'll need to check, once you decide which colleges you're applying to, you will see how to do that. So there's the Common App, Coalition for College. We call that the red app and the blue app. There's really nothing that different with those two. There's the UC app, just for the University of California. And then there's the CSU app. And then some colleges will have their own particular application. So you'll need to watch for that. Be sure to watch for deadlines. The best thing to do is to do your own spreadsheet, put in the college name, put in when things are due, cost, and application fee, so there's no surprises coming up. Most schools, lucky for you, aren't requiring ACT or SAT scores for obvious reasons, but look and see what is required. Some colleges, you'll need to do a little extra writing. You may do a Common App essay, you may do personal statements. The UCs would like you to do personal insight questions, which are very important to bring your application to life. These schools do not do interviews. UCs do not interview. So your only chance to really show who you are beyond just the numbers and the data that you're putting in your application are through those personal insight questions. Also, for students that have high financial need, there are fee waivers available for the application fee only. You can contact the college, or you can check in with your college and career center advisors when we can help you with figuring out which colleges offer that. And yeah, just follow the deadlines, don't miss them. And don't wait to the last minute too. The UC website, it's due November 30th. It almost always crashes on November 30th. Don't be those students that are waiting to the last minute. And we actually recommend that you try to finish up your applications for the UCs and CSUs before Thanksgiving, so you can actually relax and take a few days off.
Right. And I'd like to make one more point about the fee waivers for UCs and CSUs. Speaking of those two systems, that will automatically be calculated when you answer the questions about how much your family earns and how many people are in the household. So they use those two data points to calculate right there in the application whether or not you qualify for fee waivers. And it should show, oh yes, you're eligible for 4 free applications. That's the maximum that you can apply to. Maximum number of CSUs is 4, maximum number of UCs is 4, without having to pay fees if you qualify for fee waivers.
So if you wanted to apply to 6 campuses of the UCs, you could get fee waivers possibly for 4, and then you just pay for the other 2.
Mhm.
Thank you for pointing that out. The UC application, it's open now, folks, get busy. You do not need any letters of recommendation unless your application is reviewed for supplemental review, which would be in January. They do not ask for ACT or SAT scores. They do want information on your extracurriculars. So I recommend writing that up as a separate document and copy and pasting that in so you can check for typos and make sure you've got all the information in there. Also, for students, you may be working in a parent's restaurant, you may be caring for an younger sibling, older adult. There may be responsibilities in your household that keep you from doing more traditional extracurriculars like sports or something. Please know that those are just as important as sports or cheer or anything else. So please list those, including how many hours per week, how many weeks per year. That is something you're doing outside of the classroom, and the UCs love to see that information, and it really helps put you in context when they're reviewing your application. And again, Ms. Chan mentioned that the fee waiver is determined through the application. So,
Mrs. Thompson, did you want to say something about if students are first in their families to attend college, where that information would fit on the application?
I would put that in the PIQ. Talk about, well, actually, there's a checkbox.
Yeah, there's a checkbox, and your point about the PIQ, I think, is a good one too, right? To kind of talk about that experience and what it means to be first in your family to go to college. Yeah.
I would say, well, so they'll see it in the checkbox. I would certainly mention it, but I would have it in context. They're going to pick it up. You don't have to write a whole PIQ about it. But if you're writing about how, you have to ride your bike home to pick up your younger brother at their school on the way home, work it into your PIQ. But yeah.
Right, not a whole separate PIQ.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, CSU application opens October 1st. Super easy. You're just putting in your grades. You don't need to put an activity. If you may qualify for EOP and want to apply both for UCs and CSU, there is some additional information that you'll need to give them. And for EOP, you will need 2 letters of recommendation, and they doesn't need to be necessarily from teachers. So the next slide will look at the EOP application in more details. And again, the fee waiver eligibility is calculated in the application itself. And here's some of the questions that they're going to be asking. And they do want detailed information. Do not think that you can write a few sentences and submit and you will get this. It is competitive. They do not accept every single person that applies to this. I have seen very detailed stories about the experiences students have had to go through in answering these questions, and those students have been selected. So please, this is quite the leg up when you go to college to be able to be accepted to this program. So if you do apply, please put a lot of detail into these questions.
Probably the same process that you were describing, Mrs. Thompson, about setting up a Google Doc for the activities, and the PIQs probably apply for the EOP questions too, right?
Absolutely, right. Do it in a Google Doc and proofread and have someone else take a look at it. If you're first gen or high financial aid, email Mrs. Chan or I, we'd be more than happy to help you with that. So luckily, there is a transfer path as well. So for community college, you don't need to worry about it until the spring, but there will be very specific information on how to apply to community colleges. So it's a great way to do your first 2 years at a community college and then transfer. There's a tag agreement where you can pick a UC to actually apply to. You can still apply to other UCs, but there is one that you can do an agreement with. And if you do what they ask you to do, which is nothing harder than taking the right classes and passing them, they will accept you. So all the community colleges right here have the tag agreements: DVC, Laney, Berkeley City College. And if you want to go away, you can look at schools that have housing. And I know there's some in Southern California. We've had a number of students from Las Lomas. They wanted to do the community college path, but they wanted to get out of this area. So they've gone to Southern California and are doing quite well.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Next steps, Mrs. Chan.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. So next steps, here we are. On the left side, we have what you should be doing now. Meet with your guidance counselors and your College and Career Center advisors. We in the College and Career Center at Las Lomas, we're helping specifically with the applications and college-related matters, but we are not versed in what classes you should take, high school graduation requirements, and all the things that the guidance counselors do. So make sure you check in with them. And then between now through October, every high school should have college visits that Mrs. Thompson already touched on. So check with that and start writing your essays or your UC personal insight question responses or your EOP responses. Be strategic, set your deadlines first. Are you applying early to a more selective college? If yes, then do the personal statement. If you're applying to UCs, start with the personal insight questions. If you want to apply only to the CSUs, then start your EOP responses, but get going on some of the writing elements. And you can open what's available to open now are the Common App, which is for the out-of-state and private colleges, the Coalition app for UW and other colleges that use that platform, some out-of-state places that have their own applications like Western Washington, University of Nevada, Reno, the WUI colleges, many of them have their own applications that are open, and the UC application is open. That means you can start filling stuff in. What's not open yet is the CSU application for those 23 campuses like Cal State East Bay, San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly, so forth. That opens on October 1st. Another important date, October 1st, is you can begin completing that FAFSA document and the CSS profile if you need it. Watch for upcoming presentations on this topic. And between October 15th and November 1, check the various colleges for their early deadlines. Again, you want to set your deadlines first. CSU UC deadlines November 30th. And then into next year, some colleges have January and even early February deadlines. Then we want you to be looking at scholarships in the springtime, wintertime, springtime. That's a busy time to start filling out some scholarships. And by April 1st, you should have received your decisions from all of your colleges. And we'll be hosting a presentation at the very first week of April to help you compare your financial aid offers. And then May 1 is a traditional decision day where you have to submit an intent to register somewhere. We have to place a deposit. And if you have high financial need, many colleges are waiving that deposit, but it depends on the college. But that's when you have to make a decision to say, I am committing to XYZ college. Okay. Stay connected. This is a screen that you might like to take a picture of here, the College and Career Center advisors at the various high schools. Check with each high school to see if what other communication methods you have. And then here are some important upcoming presentations that Mrs. Thompson and I will be hosting. In a couple weeks, it'll be How FAFSA Helps Pay for College. November 3rd, we have an outside organization, East Bay Consortium, that's going to be bringing some folks and supporting us to help families work one-on-one with filling out your applications. So that's a great opportunity to get help with your FAFSA. Before you come, we want people to have at least set up their FAFSA accounts to save time. And then January, scholarship presentation. In April, the financial awards. And in May, we have a wonderful, what we call off to college or college success presentation to talk about all the things you might need to run into, especially for folks who parents did not go to complete college. You know, you want to know where your resources are, how to find friends, how to get plugged in, where your academic support is, where the health center support is located, and so forth. And that's it from us. So we have about 10 minutes to open it up for questions.
And you can just raise your hand if you have a question. Actually, Mrs. Chan, can you go back and put up that slide with the how to contact people and just leave that slide up?
That's a great idea.
And I did want to mention for families with high financial need, that CEOG grant is a very little bit of money, often under $1,000, but it's a limited amount of money. So if you qualify for CalFresh or any government program, do get your FAFSA done right away because you may get some of that CEOG money. So think of it as like getting paid just to do your FAFSA, but it's a limited amount. Most financial aid that comes from FAFSA is not limited, or it's not coming out of one pot, but the CEOG grant is limited. Mm-hmm. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Does anyone have questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to just state your question, or if you want to put it in the chat. We're happy to answer. I think what I will put in the chat is our email addresses.
Oh, that'd be great.
Thompson. Interesting. Okay, that's Mrs. Thompson's. And that's mine.
Okay.
All right then.
Well, I don't see questions. That's amazing.
Okay. All right. Well, this session is.
You know what? Sorry, Mrs. Chan. Why don't we stop the recording and then see if we get any questions?
Ah, great idea. I've stopped the recording. So for anyone who wants to go back and rewatch portions, we went too fast. You're welcome to watch the recording once it gets posted on the Las Lomas High College and Career Center website. That's where it's going to live. So now that I've turned off the recording, does anybody have any questions?
Oh, okay.
You know, I do have a question. I'm obviously not a student, but I'm a parent of one of the students. And my son, he doesn't really know what he